I reckon we'll get started. So thanks everyone for jumping online for the third Timeout with the Sydney Kings webinar. We are lucky enough tonight to have both Kevin Lisch and Geordie Hunter joining us on the topic of what it means to be a professional athlete. So just before we kind of get into it, my little preamble as usual. So first things first, thanks again for jumping online. It means a lot. Second thing, the purpose of this event primarily is to help young athletes, who are wanting to become potentially professional basketball players, go to college, represent Australia, whatever it may be, by being able to provide different insights and perspectives from our network of professional players, coaches, and support staff. If you are online and you are here to try and treat this as a learning experience, I would encourage you to have a notepad, take some notes, and not only take notes, but then at the conclusion of this webinar, if you have a moment, I'd encourage you to sit down at the dinner table or perhaps just have a discussion with a sibling or mum and dad about some of the points or some of the takeaways from this session, because I think it's proven that that's the best way to consolidate knowledge these days. So given that this is a learning thing, I would encourage you to, try and take advantage of that where possible. At the end or during, there is a Q&A function on this Zoom. So if you hit Q&A, you'll be able to submit questions. So as the webinar goes on, if anything comes up, feel free to submit questions. Just please note that the priority is given to the questions that have been submitted prior. So it's only if we get through the questions that have been submitted prior that we'll be able to get onto the ones that are submitted online during the evening. So I'll try not to ask too much, and then we can get on to the submitted ones so you guys can get the most out of this bit. I guess now it's probably a poignant opportunity to introduce our two guests for this evening. So we have Kevin Lisch, an 11-year professional player who's recently retired from the NBL. So I think he spent roughly about 9 out of his 11 years in the NBL, which is phenomenal. And his resume is quite impressive. I don't want to get too stuck into reading a Wikipedia bio, but the guy's an NBL champion. He's an NBL Finals MVP. He's an NBL MVP 2 times. He's been the NBL Best Defensive Player, and he's been on the All-NBL defensive team 3 times, as well as going to an Olympics to represent this country. So his resume and what he's been able to do in his career is unbelievable. And I think before we get on to Jordan, Kev, congratulations on a phenomenal career. It's sad to see you go, but
thanks a lot.
I'm sure that's all good, mate. I'm sure you've got there's plenty of reasons as to why you've decided to hang the boots. But yeah, congratulations, mate, on a phenomenal career. It's been awesome to know you this kind of past year, and thank you for jumping online. It means a lot. And then we have Geordie Hunter, who's entering his 2nd year as a professional basketball athlete. He's been fortunate enough to represent Australia at the FIBA Under-19 World Championships. He also went to the Centre of Excellence, which was formerly known as the Australian Institute of Sport, and he's had a 4-year college career at St Mary's, which is phenomenal in itself. Phenomenal college team, tends to be ranked most years and tends to go to the tournament most years. So no doubt a tremendous professional career ahead. So thank you both for jumping on, and I think we'll start with this one first. I guess to get a better idea of what your journey for the both of you has looked like, perhaps you could share some insights, Kev, to start with what your 11-year career in professional basketball looks like. And then Geordie, perhaps you could enlighten us with what your journey leading into the Sydney Kings look like. So your junior basketball, AIS potentially, and a bit of college.
Well, thanks. Hey everyone. It's great to be here, or actually at my house, but have you all here. Yeah, I kind of have a different story than I guess than most. I grew up in the U.S. And then I had a chance to come over. I actually went to Perth Wildcats for 4 years. And, I didn't foresee myself even staying in Australia, but absolutely loved it. And then I said, let's give Europe a shot. So I also played in France and in Spain, played a bit in Puerto Rico, and then came back to Australia, started having a lot of kids, so needed some family around. and I played down in Wollongong and then Sydney for 4 years. So my journey's been full of windy roads, and you don't really know what's behind the next corner, but it's been a lot of fun.
Geordie?
Beautiful. Thanks for having us, Sean. It's a pleasure, and it's a pleasure to see you, Kev, today. The journey I took to get here was similar to Kev. I grew up in the States, having been born in Australia, but I didn't play a lick of basketball over there, and kind of took it through the high school route, and that was quite late compared to most players, but was able to get involved in the junior program in Sydney, and then that took me to the AIS. And after I got to the AIS, I was fortunate enough to make a state team as well, and then rode that to St. Mary's for 4 years. And now back here, my first year of the Kings went really well, and I'm excited for the upcoming season with them.
All right, and so Geordie, I'm going to ask you to provide a little bit more detail. I'm going to be really specific. We had Brad on here last week, and he kind of spoke about, within obviously a different theme, but it kind of relates. He spoke about, like in his journey, how he never really made a state team until I think it was his final year of 18s, or it might have even been 20s. And I think, you've had an interesting journey in the sense that you've been a massive dude that's had to work really hard to get everything that you've kind of have at the moment and have achieved. Could you perhaps enlighten us a little bit with your junior basketball career, more so with like under 16s, under 18s, what that looked like and how that opportunity at the OAS came about?
You're mining the cracks. I tried to brush over it a little bit there. You brought me right back. Well, I started playing basketball in year 10. So I was on the 16Bs of my high school, and was quite tall, and I played a lot of sport. So there was semblance of coordination. And I was seen by a coach who was working at North in Crow's Nest, and he asked me to come along to the trials, and I showed up in like bright orange shorts and tennis shoes and a Kevin Garnett jersey, and made the 18-2s somehow, maybe because he personally asked me to come. And that was just an awesome year, getting to play a lot. Kind of the first time I'd really poured a lot of hours into basketball. I made the firsts the next year at my high school and got dropped down to the seconds about halfway through the year. Just wasn't ready to be in the firsts. And that off season, I had an opportunity to try out for the under 18s for New South Wales, and I got all the way down to the last cut and didn't quite make the team, which was unfortunate. I was kind of looking at being a reserve for that team, and I was starting to take basketball more seriously, and then that happened, and I was wondering if that was really going to be my path. And I got stuck into it, and I went to all the state trainings, and no one got injured, so I didn't end up going, which was good for the guys in the team. But it was invaluable, that training, and I got to play on the under 18s Div 1 team with North the following season with wonderful Sean Roger as one of the coaches on that team. And we had an awesome season. We didn't have any state players on the team, and we made a real point of knowing when we had state players on the schedule coming up, and we didn't lose a game all year. And from that, I got I was put on the radar of coaches like Marty Clark over at St. Mary's and Adam Caporn at the AIS at around the similar time. And both of them started having a look in with me, and Capes came up to my high school to work me out, and I put in one of the worst individuals of all time, maybe, just in the middle of exams, and I hadn't touched the ball in a while, and I was out of shape, and it was a mess. But they saw something in me, and thank God they did. They brought me down to Canberra, and I was able to play for the under-19s team in the Oceania qualifiers. So I hadn't made a state team yet, and I was fortunate enough to play for Australia. And from there, I signed with St. Mary's through Marty, and went to Worlds in Europe with the under-19s team later that year before setting sail for St. Mary's. And so that was kind of my unique path through the basketball landscape. And really, there was a lot of moments of, should I be doing this? Am I good enough to be pursuing this? Is it worth it? And just had coaches that believed in me, and a family that believed in me, and that helped me stick with it. And then fortunately, I'm here where I'm at now, and excited to keep growing and seeing where I can take it.
Appreciate you sharing. The only reason why I ask is, there's, and I'm sure it's no different in your career as well, Kev. If you look at all the research on the most successful professional athletes, they've all dealt with setbacks throughout their career. It's never a linear progression where you win all the time, you make every single team. Sometimes it is up and down. So I think it's important for young kids to at least get an insight, given that you are from Sydney, Jordan. So I do appreciate you sharing. We've gone a bit off script there. Okay, so now I think we can both agree that being a professional athlete is one thing, but being a successful professional athlete is another thing. And I'm sure we can both appreciate, or we can all appreciate, that the mindset required for one is vastly different to the other. Now, if we talk about the day-to-day of being a professional basketball athlete with the Sydney Kings in season, could you provide us with some insight around, what you guys think the type of mindset you need is to really get the most out of the things that, you might be asked or required to do on a day-to-day basis? So, Kev, if you could perhaps enlighten us about, all of the on-court things. So when you actually walk into the doors at Auburn, what it might look like. And then Jordan, what it might look like when you walk out of those doors at Auburn, or once practice officially ends.
Well, I think a typical day for us would be pretty much lifting at 7:30 in the morning, and that lasts for about an hour. And we've done that at a venue, close to our training facility. So me living a bit further away, like Jordan, we have to get up nice and early and make sure we get all that, get to sleep the night before, which is extremely important to get yourself set off in the right direction that day. So 7 to 8:30 is a lift. And then you have about an hour in between, hour and a half in between, until training starts. And in that hour and a half in between, we each have, our own kind of individualized schedules with prehab or rehab. We have individuals with coaches. But I guess as a player, I go into every single, or I used to go into every single practice with the mindset of, this is what I want to work on this day. I think the worst thing you can do is just rock up to practice and say, let's just go and see how it goes. You need to have a plan, and you need to think of it, and then you need to look how you want to execute that, because if you don't have anything specific you want to get out of practice that day, you end up just kind of going through the motions, I've found. So you do all that, you get, your prehab, rehab, all that. For myself, for practice, I try to mentally prepare the same as I would for a game, because, that's where you make your habits, and your habits in practice go over to the game. So if you like to mentally prepare for a game and that helps you, you better be doing that in practice, or before practice. And so I do that, and then finally practice starts. So you really do need about an hour and a half. Then you can practice from anywhere to for, I guess, an hour and a half, 2 hours, 2.5, however it goes. And then at the end, you might get up some extra shots or notice some things in practice that you want to work on. maybe you see, another guy's been struggling or needs some help. You might go over and talk to them, help them out. Um, and then you stretch, you get something to eat. We have a nice little players lounge where, our dietitian said it's important to get food into you, about half an hour, 45 minutes after you train. And then sometimes we have a yoga or Pilates session, and, just something to stretch up. So, everything's done then by around, 1 o'clock or so, depending on the schedule. But for me, the biggest thing is within that schedule, you need to have a plan and you need to prepare just like you do for a game.
Cool. Geordie?
Perfect. So, Kev touched on it a little bit. As we walk out those doors, the off-court stuff is as big a part as some of the on-court stuff is sometimes, and preparation and recovery is the biggest piece you take away from just even 1 year in the professional system. It's taking care of your body and getting your mind right and doing all things that you don't expect when you just wanting to get out in the court and get some shots and get through training. There's a lot of hours off the court that you got to take care to make sure your body's in the best possible condition to get out to training, get out to games, and perform at a high level. And beyond the basketball component is the nasty reality that basketball is a business, and it's not that bad really, but it's there's a lot of promotional commitments that players endeavor. It's a great way to connect with the community and our fans, and whether that be going to a school and running a session, or connecting with a corporate sponsor at a function, then there's a breadth of things that we're expected to do within our roles as players on the Sydney Kings, and we love it, and we enjoy it a lot, going to connect with these fans and these people who are so supportive of the team, and it's a great opportunity to give back to the community as well.
All right, so it's never, I guess we can all agree, it's not ever just basketball. It's never just, all right, you're going to practice for an hour and a half. There's a lot more to it. And Kev, I'd like to touch back on the mental preparation that you spoke about before practice. What did that process look like for you? Is it just something on the car drive? Is it the night before?
Yeah. It's a number of things. I think, it probably starts the night before in the film or the videos that the coaches send out that you watch. They were big on watching film the night before, so you were prepared, so you didn't have to waste as much time as a team, watching your own individual things. So it started with that, getting your mind around, things you see that you did well, or things that you see you needed to improve upon. And then it also came around the aspect of, whether it's visualizing those things, or I think also just mentally preparing for whether it's confrontation or things not going right, because that happens every single practice. It happens every single game. And if you're not prepared beforehand, you're probably just going to fly off the handle and lose sense of everything. But if you've at least done, a bit of preparation before, then when those tough times come, you can be, okay, I see it. Now let's get better. Now let's learn, and we've prepared. Let's get through this. So for me, the mental kind of encompasses, just imagining things you might, confront that day, and things you want to get better at. And just the more you can think beforehand, I've found the more it really helps you.
Awesome. And then, Geordie, you spoke about recovery and the importance of recovery. No doubt, especially at least from what you guys have said, it's taken quite seriously by the team, and there's strategies and processes in place for, recovery at practice, whether that's before or after. Is there anything that you do at home on top additionally?
Yeah, and to wrap up on Kev's point as well, that a lot of that film stuff and all those things are stuff you can do to keep getting better. In an era of load management and taking care of your body so much, there's a lot of ways you can keep getting better as a player that don't involve you necessarily being on the court. To answer your question, absolutely, we all have recovery packs that we bring with us everywhere, and the bare minimum is we're stretching on court after training. So if we're in a tight schedule situation and we need to get out of a stadium or we're on the road, we'll have that stuff with us. So in a hotel room or at home, we can get on the roller, or we can get on the like a lacrosse ball, which is good for hitting some pressure points or some places that are hard to reach with a roller. And I know me, I like ice bathing, and we have a lot of nice salts courtesy of a sponsor that I like to throw in the bath, and that's good for taking care of the muscles and just really doing anything you can to stay on top of your body before it gets out of hand.
Lovely. Thank you for sharing the bath salts. All right, so next question, and this will be the last one from me, and then we'll kind of dive into the ones that were submitted prior. So Kev, as a recently retired professional basketball player with an extensive career, what type of advice would you give to an athlete like Jordan, not Jordan specifically, like Jordan, who's recently finished their first professional season and they have a desire and ambition to go and finish many more? And then Jordan, as an athlete who's recently finished their first professional season, what type of advice would you give to someone that wants to be a professional athlete? So they're saying, I want to go be a 4-year college player, bang, playing the NBL, or I want to be a development player and then earn a roster spot from there.
Well, I think to someone like Jordan, I would say the first thing you have to do is you really have to enjoy what you're doing. And when I say enjoy, you have to enjoy the good times. You have to embrace the times where, you screw up, where you make the turnover that loses the game, where you have a tough practice and you just feel like you're not getting any better, as well as the times when your team, wins on that last second shot. You have to enjoy being in the gym by yourself and getting better. You have to enjoy looking at yourself honestly and saying, this is what I need to work on. This is what I do well. So I think it is just that joy and desire kind of to get better. And then you have to have that hunger yourself to get better as well, within yourself, as well as the hunger to get your teammates around you better. Because I've known a lot of guys, and there are probably times myself where I did it, where you're so focused on just getting yourself better that you lose sight of the big picture, and then it doesn't work. It doesn't work in a team environment that way. So that hunger for you to self-improve, but then to push your teammates and to help them self-improve as well.
Thanks, Kev.
You're welcome.
Some of what Kev was saying actually works for younger players as well, obviously, that are not quite at the professional rank yet. And not to step on his toes too much, but the basketball is there's so much more to basketball than sometimes people realize on the surface. And if basketball is all this, playing games is only a little chunk of it. And especially if you could find yourself in more development positions where you're not necessarily going to get as many games, and basketball becomes the recovery, it becomes film, it becomes trainings, it becomes individuals, and being able to pour yourself into that, knowing that that's going to be rewarding down the line, is can be challenging, but is a massive part of becoming a great player and learning to embrace that portion of the game. Beyond that, the biggest thing I would say for a young player, I'll just keep it simple, is as goes without saying that you want to put a lot of hours in, you want to work hard and be present at training, and be a sponge with coaches and never be afraid to ask questions and pick their brains, and they're there to get you better. So embrace that relationship, and it'll be some of the most formative relationships that you'll have in your entire life. But as a player, really focus on, especially at the start, what you're good at. And this is something I'm still working at personally, but you have certain things that you might have an aptitude for, or you find as you start playing for a few years, you're naturally quite good at, and just fill those lanes and focus on, if you're a great shooter, just really pour yourself into shooting. And if it's an A-, take that to an A+. And if you're a 6'10" guy and you're great at rebounding, don't be begging to have 100% shooting drills, and just focus on what you're good at, get really good at what you're good at, then start adding other layers to your game as you really knuckle down your niche. And there's a lot of money to be had for people who are very good at, it can be very, very narrow what they're good at on the basketball court. But as you start really honing in on your skill, you can branch out and you can become a more multifaceted player, but just really embrace getting good at what you're good at.
Thank you both for sharing. Very insightful pieces of advice. All right, so we'll get stuck into these questions. So we'll start with Talia Dawson's question. Advice for a young player coming back from injury. Oh, you want me to repeat? Did you hear that?
Yeah. Advice. Well, I could relate to that. Advice for a young player, except mine was an old player coming back from injury. But I think the first thing of advice is you have to be patient. And I know people say that, but the more frustrated you are, the more you just want to get it and get back right away, the more you're going to skip steps and not prepare yourself for when you do have that moment. So have a plan, focus on that plan, come up with it with the physio or whatever. And then just because you can't get on court doesn't mean you can't get better at basketball. There's so many areas you need to explore to say, okay, I'm not on court, I'm missing this practice time, but I'm still going to utilize this time for when I do get back on court. So it might be watching film or really staying in tune in practice and watching the players, watching the plays, the coach put in, whatever, so that when you do get that chance to come back, you're ready to go. So I think patience is the overriding thing in that, though.
And to that point, when you get back on court, trust that there's going to be rust, and the rule of thumb is however long you're out is that's how long it's going to take on court to get that rust off. So just trust you'll get back to the player you were, and you'll be in a position to get better again soon.
Perfect. Love it. Next question from Chloe Dix. What sacrifices have you both had to make to become a professional athlete?
Oh, geez, there's been a lot of sacrifices, but it's funny. I've never really saw them that way as sacrifices, really, just because I've loved playing. So, okay, I couldn't stay up till midnight every night. I had to go to bed early, but I wanted to because I wanted to feel good going into practice the next day. So, or maybe I, didn't get to go out with my friends because we had a game or whatever. But you know what? I wanted to play that game, or I wanted to go to that practice. So there are things, you have to eat healthy. You should probably do that anyways, but you you have to, do these other things. But it's more of changing the question to you get to do these things and you have the opportunity. So yes, there are sacrifices, there's frustrations throughout, but if you truly love what you're doing, I mean, it's not so much a sacrifice as a privilege, I guess.
Yeah, beyond spending a lot of time away from family, from when you're moving around the world playing basketball, it's to Kevin's point, it's there's no shame being the friend who's not out late or hanging out with his buddies till the crack of dawn or doing illicit things. It's all good to take care of your body, and your mates will still be there on the other side if that's what you're worried about. But there's no shame in making sacrifices to be selfish about getting yourself better.
All right, next question. It's from Kieran Kumaresan. What does your preparation before a game look like and why?
My preparation before a game consists of probably getting to the game about 2.5 hours early. I like just taking my time. First of all, sometimes I'll have a nap. Now that I have kids, you really don't have a chance for that. But, get something to eat, probably eat about 4 hours before the game. I like having a coffee. Some of you might be too young for coffee, so don't even think about it. Just make you hyperactive. And then I get to the game, probably 2.5 hours beforehand. Take my time, get my stuff on. We each have scheduled times for our on-court little 15 or 20-minute pregame shooting session or workout. So we get that in, come back in, sometimes lay there, just, close your eyes. Once again, mentally prepare yourself, for the game, for, maybe some of the things the coaches have said, things that you think might be happening in the game, just preparing beforehand. And then by that time, it's time for team warm-up. And then before I go out, you just try and clear your mind, say you've done the work, and just let it go and see what happens, because you can do that knowing that you've done the work.
My prep starts with a good night's sleep. I'm really focused on getting the right amount of hours in the lead up to a game day. And then my game day is just eating so much food. All my meals is just having a great breakfast, going for a walk afterwards, and coming back, just taking it easy. Usually around that time we head out to the court and just get to know the stadium and just see the ball go through the net a couple times and just get a light sweat. And then you come back, you shower, you rest. I usually do something non-basketball in that time, just to kind of let your mind not think about it for a moment, because otherwise you spend so much time preparing, looking at scout, watching film, and the lead up is just, it's in there. You just got to kind of make sure you don't overdo it. And then pre-game meal, more food, lots of carbs, see the guys, just make sure that the vibe is right with the team and everyone's in a good space, ready to go out and compete. And then you come back and you get ready for the game, and then you head over, and usually 2 hours before, and you get geared up. You're on getting taped, you're on court, getting shots, getting the last little bits of scout down, making sure it's really ingrained in there. And then, as Kev said, just going out and getting ready to let it rip. You've done all the preparation. You don't need to be consuming yourself with thought from then.
Awesome. Next question from Opal Bird. What is one thing you wished you knew before you became a professional athlete?
That's a very good question.
How to shoot.
Yeah. Well, I think one thing, it's funny, I feel like all my answers come back to the mental side of things, but we put so much work into physically getting better, stronger, faster, practicing. And then you realize the higher and higher you get at each level, the more it's about the mental game and how you handle situations of pressure, how you handle confrontation, how you handle different personalities. And I mean, you can go on, but I think that that mental maturity for me is the biggest.
I would say no matter what competition you find yourself in, what level you're playing at, you can never go too hard. No one enjoys watching the guy that's too cool out there. It's always, they want to see the guys playing their tail off.
That's an interesting one. So when do you think the turning point is for that? At what level do you get to where everyone's over that?
I'm not over it yet, so you might have to ask Kev.
When you get over the point of being too cool for school?
You know, you guys both went to college, right? So you played high school basketball, you played college basketball, and then you went and played professional basketball. Is it when you get to college basketball, everyone's on the same page?
I think the moment when you're looking really cool, but you're sitting on the bench and the coach isn't playing you because you're being too cool. That's the moment you say, okay, I better change something.
Stops working. It stops working after a while.
So I'd say probably once you get to high school or around there and it starts getting a little more competitive, your energies start moving away from, trying to impress the person in the stands to like, let's just focus on what I can do to help the team and get on the court.
All right. So next question is from Rebecca Donnelly. How do you deal with disappointment when things haven't gone well in a game or in training for you?
Well, I think the fact of the matter is most of the time, or I should say a lot of the time, things don't go well. That's what basketball is. It's really like any sport. It's a game of kind of the imperfect. So it's about embracing those and first of all realizing that that's a real part of the game and it's going to happen whether you like it or not. So using those as part of opportunities. And I think for those of us who have been on championships, once you win a championship and you're sitting there in the locker room after that championship, you're not thinking about that game. You're thinking about the journey and some of the tough times that you had to go through to get to that and how you learn from it and how you embrace that. So I think you just have to kind of be the eternal optimist and say, I'm going to make good out of every situation.
Yeah, as Kev said, you're not going to go through a basketball career without having peaks and valleys, and especially some valleys. But especially with maybe a rotten training or a bad game, just being able to compartmentalize and realize, all right, it's one game. They're all worth the same. They're going to wake up tomorrow and have and maybe being able to remember that you have another chance to do it again tomorrow, and taking what you learned from your negative experience there, and just all you can do is take the learnings and move forward. And you're going to mess up again on the same thing and you're going to feel like an idiot, but just keep learning, keep getting better, and keep getting back on the horse.
Okay. So this one's from a Sydney Kings staff member, Michael Johnston. Shout out.
MJ.
The guy with the tickets. How many hours of sleep do you try and get each night during the week in season? Not travel or game days.
No, good question. Definitely between 8 and 9. I try to get 9. That's what I aim for. Obviously, like I said, everyone has different factors and some of us have kids and stuff, but definitely need between 8 and 9, because you start getting less sleep than that, it just starts adding up and you're eventually going to break down.
Yeah, I'm the same. I'm dysfunctional, not worth being around on less than 8 hours.
Fair enough. And next question is from Sam Johnston. Excluding your family members, who would you say has helped you the most during your career, and why would you say they've helped you the most?
Oh gosh, that's a tough question. Excluding my family, well, it's hard to exclude my family when I talk about basketball. So, because my parents were obviously the biggest. I had a really good coach in college, or a couple of them, Rick Majerus, who is one of the best, coaches to ever coach in college. So he was big and helped me understand the game a bit more. And then really the good thing about each coach I've had is they've all had their areas where they've helped me. So some coaches may be stronger in different areas than others, and you take a little of everything from each coach and it helps you. So I know that doesn't give you a direct answer, but it definitely helped me just looking back on each coach, taking something from each one.
I'm going to skirt around it too. I couldn't pick a single coach on the journey, and you do it with your family the whole way, but the coach-player relationship is special, and I wouldn't be playing basketball without each and every one of them. So yeah, that's how you get here, is just forming bonds with those guys or girls that want to help you get better.
Okay. We'll make this the last question. At a professional level, what makes a good teammate?
At a professional level, what makes a good teammate? Well, I think the
Debating
same
skills,
thing.
Kev would say.
What's that?
Debating skills.
Debating? No, I'm not the best at that. Probably the thing that I think it wouldn't matter whether it's professional or non-professional. I think what makes a good teammate is maybe simply just wanting to see your other teammates succeed. Because I've always said, if you're out there trying to make your own teammates look better, you're going to look better in the process, because everyone does. So I guess if I could keep it to one simple thing, is try and help your teammates look better, and you're going to look better yourself.
During Kev's MVP runs, he was probably out there responsible for 50 points a game between him scoring and his teammates scoring off his passes. So there's definitely that off-court good teammate stuff can bleed onto the court for sure. But your teammates there's people out on the team who are in it for themselves, and they get found out really quickly. So if you're out there and you really want your teammates to thrive and succeed, as Kev said, it'll in the end make you look better, but it'll just make your experience that much more enjoyable. And basketball, we're talking about recovery and going to the gym and the on-court training stuff, but the part you forget about basketball is the time spent in the locker rooms and on the road and hanging out with all those guys all the time, and just you can't go past being a good teammate. And front offices nowadays, they're picking players 50% on how good they are and 50% how well they're going to fit into the team. So if that's not a big enough reason to focus on it, I don't know what is.
Kev, Geordie, thank you both for your time. That was tremendous. I can't thank you guys enough. And Kev, once again, congratulations on a tremendous career, and all the best with whatever the next step in your journey looks like. And for everyone else that's online, thanks for jumping online. Next week we'll have Lauren Nicholson and Jared Martin on. So Lauren Nicholson is a current Australian Opal, and Jared Martin is a 4-year college player at Grand Canyon University. And the theme for next week will be the college adventure, where we'll talk all things college basketball. Once again, like I said at the beginning, I'd encourage you all to, talk about some of the things that were discussed by both Kevin and Jordan, and not only discuss it amongst yourselves, like if you're a young kid, but I'd encourage you to talk about some of these things with your parents. It's not only is it important for you guys to know this, but I would say that it's just as important for mum and dad to know the same. So, Kev, Geordie, once again, thank you. And everyone else that was online, thank you. And hopefully see you next week.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for having us.
See you later.
See you guys.
Thanks.